Good evening and welcome to the Guilderland Central School District's Board of Education meeting. Today is March 4th, 2025. Can everyone please silence their cell phones and stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll start with our high school representatives.
Hi, my name is Parth Surecha, and I'm one of the student board representatives. It's such an honor to be here tonight.
My name is Levin Panous. I'm the other Board of Education representative. So the first thing we wanted to say is that the interims will come to an end this Friday. So students should be on the lookout to make sure all their grades are in order.
Regan, I'm not getting any sound.
Hold on 1 second, Levin.
I'm not getting it. I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, the
Anything.
mic doesn't appear to be.
Christian, can you just check the mic for us? Thanks. 1 second. Do you want to try again, Levin?
Yeah.
Let's want to test it.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Gloria, can you? Okay, we're good, Levin.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So the first thing I wanted to say is that the interims come to an end this Friday. So students should be on the lookout to make sure all their grades are in order and to make sure everything is set. The second thing we have is that the second annual pickleball tournament will be held on March 12th, and signups are due on March 6th. So there'll be 3 levels for each tournament. So there'll be a beginner tournament, an intermediate level, and an advanced tournament. So each winner will receive a medal. And if you guys have any questions regarding the event, you can ask me because I'm the president of the pickleball club. That's all for me. I'll pass it along to Parth.
Thank you, Levin. This year, the Guilderland players will be putting on their annual show of the musical. This year, it's called My Favorite Year. The musical will be held on March 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, or this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The musical will take place from 7 p.m. to around 9 to 9:30 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And on Sunday, it'll start a little earlier at 2 o'clock and end around 4 to 4:30. Also, I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I'll go further in depth now. The cultural fair is just around the corner, coming in at April 11th or the day before our spring break. The cultural fair is one of the biggest school-wide events here at GHS, and it's where students from all over the school come together and represent different countries, cultures, and traditions for a whole day in the West Gym by setting up booths and doing many performances such as dancing and taekwondo. Students do not have to go out of their way to actually see and participate in the cultural fair. It'll happen during the school day, and it depends on whether or not the teacher would like to bring them down there in their class or not, whether for half the block or the whole block, or if they can't get their lesson plans in and need to and cannot go to the cultural fair, they can choose not to do that as well. Finally, from us, spring sports will be starting this March 17th? Yeah. 17th will be the start of our spring sports, which includes varsity and junior varsity for here at Guilderland High School. These sports will include JV tennis, I believe outdoor track will be happening as well, and many other sports, including baseball as well. That's all from us tonight. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you. Parth, do you know if that means that tryouts start the 17th? Or if the season...
Yes, I believe tryouts
Tryouts?
also
Okay.
begin the 17th, and then, yeah, depending from there, and then they keep going from there.
Thank you. And Levin, I'd like to volunteer my junior for your pickleball tournament. Thank you.
I'll be there too, so, I mean, hopefully for me, I'll beat her, so.
Please recruit you-know-who. Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we'll move on to our public comment. I just need to read my little blurb. The Board of Education encourages public participation at its meetings and recognizes its responsibility to hear public comment. An acknowledgement of the public comment, either orally or in writing, will be provided as appropriate after the meeting. As a matter of practice, the Board of Education does not engage in dialogue during the public comment period. There will be 2 opportunities at each regular board meeting for public comments to be heard. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes each. Although the Board of Education welcomes comments about programs offered by the by the district and other aspects of the district's operation, the board expressly prohibits public comment that would infringe on a particular person's or student's privacy rights, would be disruptive of the board meeting, or create some safety issue, such as those types of speech which are not protected by federal or state freedom of speech rights. Persons who desire to speak at the board about specific issues relating to employees or other confidential matters should request an executive session and a letter to the board president briefly outlining the issues to be discussed. Granting such request will be at the discretion of the Board of Education. Gloria, did you mean to call me in the middle? Hi. Are you able to hear now, Gloria? Is that what this is? Okay, well, so Gloria just FaceTimed us during the meeting. Okay, it's okay, Gloria. We do have one public comment. My name is Jo Burke, and I am very proud to be the director of Altamont Free Library. I'm sorry that a prior work commitment prevents me from joining you this evening. I've been made aware of the proposal to decrease Altamont Elementary School librarian Ann Johnson's schedule from 4 days per week to 3. It is my firmly held opinion that this would be a grave mistake. Ms. Johnson and the library she runs are a lifeline to the students at Altamont Elementary School. The need for access to books and literacy instruction is greater at AES than at any other elementary school in the Guilderland Central School District and in the Altamont Elementary School Library. AES students can find the books that will spur a love of reading that will last their entire lives. It goes without saying that the fewer hours that the library door is open and students have access to their librarian, the fewer opportunities they will have to discover those books and to develop that love. Reducing AES students' ability to use the school library will create an unsupportable disparity of access. Linwood Elementary School is projected to have 18 class sections in the 25-26 school year compared to Altamont's 15. Despite the small disparity in school size, Linwood students will, under the current proposal, continue to have access to a full-time library and a full-time librarian. This will naturally result in a disparity of educational outcomes between those two sets of students. We know, all of the academic studies tell us, that developing an early aptitude for reading correlates highly with improved academic outcomes throughout a student's academic career. The reading coaches and classroom teachers in GCSD schools do an extraordinary job in the face of overwhelming societal headwinds to engender that aptitude. But it takes a library and a school librarian to show students the enormous breadth of the possibilities that lie open to them when they develop reading skills. I fully understand and acknowledge the financial constraints that the district has in operating or is operating under, and I do not envy the task that the Board of Education, the superintendent, and her staff are faced with. However, at a time when children's literacy rates are the lowest in living memory, at a time when misinformation and disinformation have never been more rampant and critical thinking skills have never been more needed, at a time when access to non-screen-based entertainment and enrichment has never been more important, at this time of all times, we ought to increase, not decrease, our students' access to their library and the educational materials that it provides. Yes, there are marginal savings to be realized by shuttering the AES library for an additional day per week, but those savings will come at a heavy cost to AES students and faculty. Over the past 6 months, Ms. Johnson has checked out nearly 10,000 books to AES students, many of whom have no other access to books in their homes or a reliable way of getting to a public library. In comparison, Altamont Free Library checked out about the same number of children's books in all of 2024. Clearly, Ms. Johnson is doing something right. Altamont Elementary School students need and deserve as much access to their excellent school library as they can get. I ask the Board of Education to reconsider reducing the access. Thank you for your consideration. Was that the only public comment? Okay. Thank you to Mr. Burke. And I think we jump in, Marie, to the 2025-26 budget development.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight to take our first look at the budget for the 2025-26 school year. Our Assistant Superintendent for Business and I are going to tag team this presentation. And, I just want to point out the title. we're at a time of transition in lots of different ways. And so what we'll be presenting tonight is really the difficulty of making choices in this time of change. And the first thing I want to say is, for the first time in certainly my practice here, we are not going to be presenting a complete budget tonight, even though we traditionally would present the superintendent's budget, which would be a complete draft. We're not doing that tonight because we still have more work to do given our circumstances. So we'll be back at this a week from tonight with more complete information, but we wanted the board and the community to kind of know where we are so far. So the 4 big things we'll focus on today, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the priorities that we use in developing the budget and the process that we use. That process has been the same as it's been in previous years. Dr. Van Alstyne will spend some time reviewing the financial context for our budget this year. And then he'll hand it back to me to do what I'm calling a partial summary of recommended changes for next year. There are many changes there. There probably will need to be a few more going forward. And then we'll wrap up by talking about next steps in the budget development process and hopefully getting a bit of guidance from the Board of Education on our work so far. So as always, we have key questions that drive all of our work, and they begin with, what are our priorities? And we ask the question, what do our students need? It's always tempered by, however, what can we afford now and sustain over time? We want to be very mindful of making decisions today that will set up the school district and our community for a future that is well-resourced. So we're not promising things today that we have to take away down the road. And then this is a time of change, and how do we remain focused on our priorities when we could be pulled in different directions? So those are the questions that really are going to guide what we share with the board tonight in our community, and the decision-making process that will lead us all the way till April 8th, when the board will adopt our budget. We always start with our mission, and I used the same photo last year. I have to admit it. It is just one of my absolute favorite graduation photos, to see our young adults looking up and forward to the life that is ahead of them. I know they're looking at the screen, watching the video of the seniors, but I'm not sure who took this picture, but it is just a classic. And it, I think, speaks to the mission that we have for each and every one of our students. And here is our mission statement. I won't read it to all of you, but just remind everyone that we think so much about all of our students. More exactly, we think about each and every one of them and the unique needs that they all bring to us, and give us the privilege to try to meet and support as they work through their 13-year journey here in our school district. And we have a vision statement, and by definition, the vision asks us to look forward, so we do need to be future thinking. That's been a major topic of all of our conversations for the last many, many months, not only with our operating budget, but also in our plans for improving our facilities. So here's the district leadership planning process that we use. We begin in the fall, not long after the school year is underway, to go back and really reassess the decisions we made the previous spring. So in stage 1, we call it, of our budget, we go back and look at, well, what did we decide in April of 2024, and how is it going? And we do make adjustments based on what our building principals and program leaders tell us about how those decisions are playing out when they're actually made real in the new school year. We also spend some time doing a detailed analysis of student needs. The biggest one of those is we look at enrollment and enrollment trends, always asking the question, how many students are we serving? Followed closely by, what are the student academic, social, and emotional supports and needs that are going to be needed to meet the needs of each of those students? And then in Guilderland, we pride ourselves on having a robust and varied opportunities for learning both inside and outside of the program. We hear at each board meeting from our student representatives who remind us about all the important things our students do academically, but also to enrich their lives outside of the actual school day. We also spend a lot of time looking at our non-instructional costs. Largely, those are our facilities needs and how do we keep the spaces where our children are learning and our staff are teaching and working in good condition. And then our transportation costs are always an important driver, no pun intended, in this work. And then lastly, we also have to look at costs that are outside of our control. Those seem to be more and more out of our control. And I know we'll hear some more about our health insurance costs and what's happening with them, as well as costs associated with other employee benefits. So I'll just foreshadow so far what this budget does. We do maintain our class size guidelines in what I will propose tonight. We preserve most, I will not say all, of our existing programs and services for students. We preserve our social and emotional supports for students. We do propose necessary reductions because we do have a gap that we'll talk more about, that whenever possible, and it's not always possible, have limited impact on students. Try to minimize as much as we can, recognizing that we can't minimize to zero. And then to propose staff reductions that are, whenever possible, and it's not always possible, that those reductions are absorbed through attrition, which means we have staff who are resigning or retiring, and we're looking again at those positions to see if in fact we need to fill them going forward. The increases in this budget are what I would call absolutely necessary. In stage 2 of our budget development process, our leadership team members will tell you they come forward with lots of things that they need and wish for to enhance their program. And in this presentation, you are only going to hear those things that are absolutely necessary for us to meet the needs of students next year. The budget also reflects increased costs in areas outside of our control. I've mentioned this. Health insurance, tax certiorari refunds are still plaguing us and play a big part in our challenges here. And the last thing I'll mention is that what we are proposing tonight, even though it's not quite complete, does not exceed the tax levy limit, which Andrew will talk more about. So what we are proposing so far requires a simple majority of our voters for approval. And with that, Andrew, I'll hand it off to you. And I'll take your seat.
All right. Thank you. As Dr. Wiles said, the context for this budget is very important to understand the decisions we are proposing today, even in a partial budget proposal. But the current year snapshot we'll start with. Our 2024-2025 school budget received significant support from the community. 72.4% of the community voted in support of the budget, which had a 2.74% tax increase, which, as all of our budgets have done under the tax cap, complied with the tax levy limit. What does this budget support? Well, we have 4,820 students this year, 504 teachers, 454 support staff members, which are varied roles across the district, and 26 administrators and supervisors. So just over half of our employees are teachers, but there are support staff who do essential work supporting the mission of educating our students. The 72.4% approval was a high mark in recent years, but all of our budgets have enjoyed significant support from the community. Nearly 2/3 support over the last 5 years. All of them have complied with the tax cap. In some cases, our proposed levy has been at our levy limit, and in some cases, we have proposed levies below the levy limit. It's very likely this year it will be at the levy limit, but there's no plan to override the levy limit. The breakdown of our students, this is a slide we present every year, both what we have this year and what we're projecting for next year. Overall, there's only a projection of an 8-student decrease for next year. But I want to look at this in a little more detail to understand how having the same approximate number of students from year to year can actually, because of the composition of the cohorts, yield very significantly different results. For this graph, I grouped our elementary enrollment in 2-year cohorts. So the first chart is combined kindergarten and first grade enrollment. The middle bars are combined second and third grade enrollment, and the far from me bars are combined fourth and fifth grade enrollment. The gray bars are our actual enrollment in 2021-22, 2022-23, 2023-24, and this year. And the red bar is the projection for next year's enrollment. What these images show are we have a concentrated enrollment decline in our youngest students. This is a reflection of 2 trends that are going on. One is the number of births in our school districts have declined significantly and will continue to decline even for kindergarten years that are not yet in this projections. So what is in this chart is likely to continue into the future for at least the next few years. Second, the ratio of babies born into the district to kindergartners has been decreasing. That is, in previous years, we would often see more kindergartners than babies that had been born in the district 5 years prior. That trend has been reversing, so we're seeing sort of a lower translation rate from births to enrollment. These numbers are particularly important because changes in state aid have made per pupil funding the actual law of state aid and foundation aid. So enrollment declines, if the formula were to be fully followed, could down the road yield declining state aid projections, which is something we have to factor in when we talk about our budget context. But the majority of our spending each year, our revenue each year, comes from our tax levy. The tax levy in New York State has been subject to a tax cap for a little over 11 years. And it's a formula determined by the state which determines the basis you need to pass the budget. So the district complies with the tax cap, that is, the budget it proposes includes a levy that is at or below the limit. It needs a simple majority of 50% plus 1 votes for passage. If it seeks to override the tax cap, it needs a 60% supermajority for passage. If it's defeated, the district can propose an alternative budget one time. If that budget is defeated, the district has to adopt a contingency budget, which includes a freeze in the levy and other restrictions on spending. This is a breakdown of the steps that go into calculating the tax levy limit. What it seeks to do is, as a basis, start with last year's tax levy, account for growth in property assessed value within the district. That's the tax-based growth factor. That's new properties brought onto the tax rolls that the levy will be distributed across. Account for pilots, which are payments in lieu of taxes. Account for spending, changes in spending related to capital construction projects or allowable aidable debt. Those are excluded from the tax cap. And the final figure gives you the levy limit, the tax levy limit that it can grow to, again, be a simple majority budget. In our case, our tax levy limit for next year is $1.8 million, or 2.22%. As I mentioned, state aid is important. The concern related to enrollment. This is our second largest source of revenue, and the vast majority of our revenue comes from local and state sources. The federal government revenue makes a very small percentage of our overall budget. Foundation aid is the state's single largest support for school districts. That is a general purpose aid that's unrestricted in its usage. Last year was the first year that school districts received their full funding under the formula. Prior to that, for 15 or so years, the state had not fully phased in the formula. In last year's executive budget, the governor proposed eliminating something called save harmless or hold harmless, which is a policy that prevents a district from receiving a reduction in aid year over year, regardless of what the formula says. This proposal did not make it into the final enacted budget, but the governor and the legislature did agree on conducting a study of the foundation aid formula, which was conducted by the Rockefeller Institute of Government. Guilderland this summer hosted one of their regional fora on the foundation aid. In December, they released their study, and they presented their study as a menu of policy options to be considered. In her executive budget proposal this year, Governor Hochul did not include eliminating Safe Harmless, but she did add a couple modifications suggested from the Rockefeller Institute study, two of which that affected our aid are replacing 3-year free and reduced price lunch average data with an economically disadvantaged student data count that is more accurate, and for the measure of poverty, replacing the 2000 census, that's the census 25 years ago, with 3-year small area income and poverty estimates that the Census Bureau conducts to estimate school-age poverty in a given school district. Both of these measures accurately reflected the increased need that our student body faces, as economically disadvantaged and poverty have both risen within our district. And that has resulted in a projected foundation aid increase, which I will get to in a moment. But there were a few other policy dimensions in the executive budget I want to highlight. One is she did not make any changes to expense-based aids. These are aids where a school district spends in one year and receives a portion of that spending back in the following year in state aid. Our previous governor used to annually propose lots of changes that never made it into law, but that required districts to respond to regardless. She also proposes expanding the universal access to school meals. That would affect our district because we do not currently qualify under the free universal meals program, and that would provide breakfast and lunch to all of our students if that goes into effect, and that would be for next year. And finally, she proposed a distraction-free schools policy that would require school districts to ban devices during the school day. She also came to Guilderland recently after announcing this to kick off her conversations statewide about the distraction-free schools. But now I want to go back to our aid projections. This chart looks at what we budgeted in aid for this year, what we expect to receive in aid for this year, and then our proposed budget for next year. Budget to actuals, we project receiving about $382,000 more in aid than we had budgeted for, which is 0.93%, so we pretty accurately budgeted state aid. Our budget proposal for next year, we see a large increase in foundation aid year over year, but we do have significant declines in building aid and in transportation aid. Building aid is mirrored by a reduction in debt service payments for aidable expenses, so that is more neutral in our budget, both our budget and our tax levy. The transportation aid, I'll go into more detail later in this presentation about the complexity of spending, budgeting, actual expenditures, and state aid, and how different parts of the budget connect with each other. This slide. One of the challenges our district has faced for the last 6 or 7 years that really accelerated after the pandemic is an increasing need to rely on contract transportation, largely because of a shortage of bus drivers, which is sort of a statewide and really a nationwide challenge. We have excellent bus drivers, but we did not have enough of them. This year, for a number of factors, one, we were able to hire enough bus drivers to staff all of our existing routes. We also deployed new software and redid all of our routes for the first time in many, many, many years. We have sharply cut our use of contract transportation. This is where I want to, with this slide only, I'm going to get deep in the weeds to show how all the different parts connect with each other. So we've saved almost $2 million in contract transportation this year. But we're spending $620,000 more on staff salaries, and this is across the board. A lot of this is budgeted positions that we've previously been unable to fill, and some of this is expenditures beyond what was budgeted, but again, more than paid for the savings in contract transportation. So we're very happy with this. We're providing better service to our students, consistent routing, consistent drivers. And for next year, we've reduced the budget line for contract transportation by almost $2.4 million. And this is a holding point because the deadline for out-of-district contract transportation requests is April 1st. After April 1st, Craig Lips, our transportation director, and his team will review the applications we did receive and see if we need to make any modifications to that amount. And we've increased transportation salaries by $425,000. Again, as I said, the $620,000 included a lot of budgeted money. So this is salary increases, but we're also projecting a $310,000 decrease in transportation aid because those contracts, we received aid on. So we get aid on the driver's salaries, there's less overall spending, so there's less aid in the following year. Now, we do have one-time savings from this year, and that will come up later in the board meeting when the board is going to consider a resolution to put that savings into the capital reserve to use for the capital project, which will save money for taxpayers and reduce the amount we have to borrow and the costs of the capital project. But this is an illustration of how all of the parts, you pull one string and it affects all the other parts of the tapestry. Earlier, Dr. Wiles referenced significant cost drivers that are out of our control. These are some of the largest. Number one, our health insurance is increasing $2.3 million, which is a little over 11%. This is overwhelmingly driven by prescription drug increases of 16%. And this 16% actually reflects a significant reduction from what our original projection was. So our original projection was 21%. But our school district health insurance committee adopted some cost-saving program changes that reduced this to only 16%. Guildwood is very unique in that our health insurance decisions are made by a committee that reflects all of the bargaining or employment units within the district. We meet throughout the year and review current health insurance, talk about issues that are arising, talk about coverage for next year. We do this through the single committee, not through, like a lot of other school districts do, collective bargaining with each unit. So we're able to have a unified health insurance policy, which is often to our district's benefit. We have increased ERS contributions. This is a large percentage increase. This is both the contribution rate has grown, but also we are paying more of the salaries than we had budgeted. You pay ERS based on the actual salaries you pay, not on what you've budgeted. By filling more non-instructional roles, by having salary increases for non-instructional roles, our ERS contributions increase. Also have increased in Social Security. And finally, the other employee benefits line, OPEB. This is benefits that are paid out when members retire, vacation days, sick days, etc. These incentives are something we budget for, but we're at sort of a peak of retirements. So at the same time, as Dr. Wiles mentioned, a lot of the savings we're proposing are through attrition. We do have increased costs because of the retirement payouts to people. As I mentioned, capital debt is declining. So we have a $1.25 million decrease in our debt service payments, corresponding to the $1.5 million decrease in building aid. These are structured in conjunction with our financial advisor to try to smooth the impact on the levy. But we also have the tax certiorari bond. This is not excludable from the tax cap, so it has to be paid for with our sort of tax cap revenues. Our total payment for next year will be $747,000, but $347,000 of this is an increase. The rest of it is already budgeted for in this year's payment. This is the culmination of that last round of tax certiorari payments that existed from 2019 through last year. We are no longer contesting any of these. They're all closed and resolved. but we will be paying for them for many years to come. Again, before I hand it over to Dr. Wiles, the context of all these hits at both the students today and the future. With the declining enrollments at the elementary level, the choices we make today are going to have even more significant challenges or impact on the future because we will have fewer students in the future. So not addressing the budgetary challenges now would only deepen the issues we have in the future. And to get some specifics on that, I will now turn it back over to Dr. Wiles.
Thanks, Andrew. It's been a few years since we have had a budget discussion where we've talked about reductions. So it feels particularly difficult to do that, but they are kind of the reality that we are in at the moment. So I'm going to work our way through, these are recommended changes. It's going to include a mix of things that we're adding because they are absolutely necessary to meet the needs of students, but also some recommended reductions that are either driven by changes in enrollment, by changes in positions when we've had retirements, or just areas where we believe we can find some savings. And I'll preface all of this that I'm going to share several slides of these changes and get to the punchline right now that even after doing all of the things I'm going to talk through right now, we are still $450,000 short of having a balanced budget as a result of this. So we will still need to take more actions beyond what I'm about to show. So I'm going to start with our elementary class sizes. You know, we have heard year after year from our community that maintaining our class size guidelines is a priority, and we absolutely understand that. As a reminder, for many, many years now, our guidelines have been for grades K2, we would have 18 to 23 students, and grades 3 through 5, 21 to 25. So proposed for the upcoming school year is a reduction of 6 sections across the district. These are all based on declining enrollment. And reducing the number of what we call unassigned FTEs from 4 to 3. You'll recall that we often build in these unassigned positions in order to address changes in enrollment that happen after the budget development process is over. I'm going to share the next slide, and you'll see that we're going to remain within our class size guidelines. I know this is a complicated slide because I'm trying to capture kind of the 30,000-foot view of our district so you can see where the various buildings are with their various class sizes. So all of the buildings, if we're adding a section or subtracting a section, these are all based on a formula that Andrew works through based on the projections using statistical analysis. In previous years, we have used the formula and then made some tweaks before we would come to this presentation. Given our financial circumstances, this chart simply represents as the formula drives it. So you'll see sections up and down across the board. If you see a section, I'll point one out right here, like this first grade section at Guilderland Elementary School. It's a first grade section. There are projected 23 students in each of the sections because we're going down one section. That asterisk means this is a classroom, a grade that we are going to be watching closely as the rest of the year unfolds. We maintain this spreadsheet of every building, every grade, where our principals update the number of children enrolled in that grade on a near weekly basis, and we watch to see how these numbers unfold. I'm highlighting that one because it's an area where the formula may have underestimated the number of children just based on the number of kindergartners that we have in that classroom. So that very well may be a section that we'll need to address going forward. You'll see there are several sections that have that asterisk. So these are classrooms and grades that we're going to look closely at. Students move in, students also move out. So we want to keep very close eyes on all of that. You know, overall, our class averages are quite reasonable. As you look down that last column on the far right, they are in the high teens, low 20s. But I understand that averages sometimes mask places where there are very low class sizes. For example, in kindergarten, right now we're projecting that class size at 15.67. But we also see rather high ones. For example, at Linwood, the 4th grade is at 24.67. So we watch all of these things and make adjustments as they go. So some other recommended changes that we're looking for in order to reap some savings, and you've already heard public comment about this very first one. We are looking at a proposal to reduce the librarian position at Altamont Elementary School from 0.8 to 0.6. That's a reduction of 0.2. Some of it is driven by sections. We increased this position a few years back when we added 3 self-contained classrooms to Altamont. Those 3 sections have since grown to 4 and moved to 2 different buildings. They're at Guilderland Elementary School and Pine Bush Elementary School. So we're down to 15 sections at Altamont Elementary School. I also want to point out that that building serves 281 students. I'll compare that to Linwood, for example, where there are 18 sections, but there are 401 students. So we look at sections as well as total number of students served. The next 2 reductions are based on really that premise that we're going to have fewer elementary sections, and it translates into a 0.1 reduction for elementary art and a 0.2 reduction for elementary music. Also, it touches our physical education staffing. This is district-wide, a 0.5 reduction based on fewer sections across the district. The next item here, I mentioned and Andrew reiterated that some of the reductions that we're making are based on something called attrition. And this is one of them, honestly. We have 8 teaching assistants who are retiring at the end of this year. So one of the places that we're looking to get some savings is to not replace those 8. And the place where we would look to do that, unfortunately, is the 1st grade level. We have many TAs who we must have in our self-contained classrooms and our, one-to-one assignments. We are not mandated to have teaching assistants in 1st grade. It's a reduction of 48 hours and a savings of $365,600. So it is quite a bit. I'm not pleased having to say that, but that's where we are at the moment. We're also looking at reducing a reading position at Pine Bush Elementary School. I'll just foreshadow that this is not a reduction in a position overall. But rather, as I mentioned when we started, we really do look at student data. And when we look at the analysis of our students at Pine Bush, there are fewer students who meet the needs for specialized reading intervention. But that need is increased in 2 other buildings, Guilderland Elementary School being one and middle school being the other. So we're proposing moving this position and splitting it between GES and FMS. Switching to the middle school, this year when we were working on the budget and I asked all of our principals and program leaders to tell me what their priorities were, the number 1 word I heard was maintain. And this is an area where, given the numbers of students we have entering 6th, 7th, and 8th grade next year, that we can maintain that 16, 16, 16 number of homerooms that we established a few years back to reduce class size. So that is going to continue as it was. However, we are looking at one reduction from a support staff position at the middle school. We are looking to reduce an account clerk by 0.5. We'll need to look at how we redeploy the tasks assigned to that portion of the position. And as I referred to a few minutes ago, we are looking to add 0.5 of reading support to meet the needs of students there. Biggest changes are with special education. We are adding a one-to-one LPN. This is directly related to student need for $30,000. The next couple items that we are adding are a reflection of the needs of students that we're seeing who are poised to be entering our school next year. So our special education department is proposing the addition of 2.0 FTEs in special education. And the idea here is to expand the continuum of service for our primary students with significant needs and create 2 classrooms that would be somewhere in between a self-contained classroom and a classroom where students are fully mainstreamed with perhaps consultant teaching or co-teaching. We've heard from our CSP faculty and staff that expanding the continuum of services for students is really important. So it's less of an either-or placement, but more of a how do we best meet the needs of students and provide as many opportunities for students to mainstream into the general education classroom as possible. We see students entering at GES and Westmere with the greatest of those needs, so we're proposing placing a classroom of this nature in each of those 2 buildings. And along with that is the addition of 24 hours of teaching assistants. So we are looking for supporting an additional CSP classroom at FMS, as well as the 2 primary classrooms that I just referred to, for an add of $184,400. And then the last addition is actually the last addition on this page. We have a 0.4 school psychologist position that is currently in the budget. We would like to turn this, expand it into a 1.0 by adding a 0.6. We recognize the need to address the expanding needs of the students who are coming to us. This would also provide an opportunity for more help to conduct evaluations, especially for our out-of-district placements, and to provide behavioral supports and intervention strategies. And then back to the middle school, we have 7 students currently in our elementary buildings and who are moving up to the middle school next year. We have 1 section of CSP at FMS at this time. The addition of these 7 students creates a need to go back to having 2 sections, so this would add an additional FTE. We do have savings in special education that come from the students who are aging out or graduating from our programs or who may be in out-of-district programs, and there's about $200,000 of savings there. Another area that we're looking at, also driven by this concept of attrition, we have an instructional administrator currently working in the art, business, and FACS departments who will be retiring at the end of June. We are proposing reorganizing this position into an instructional administrator for fine arts. So this leader would be overseeing and leading our art and music program. So we would be down 1 FTE from our administrative team for a savings of approximately $115,000. There's a little more work we need to do with this. We have to think through the leadership and support for our business program and for our family and consumer science program at the middle school. Those leadership and support tasks will need to be reassigned, and we're going to work with our Instructional Administrator Association to sort through those details very soon. The other piece of this, recognizing that our a new fine arts administrator would now have 2 arts areas to support. We would add a teacher leader in each of those areas to help with things like professional development, help facilitate departmental communications, help with coordination efforts around concerts and art shows. Those teacher leader stipends are $2,800 each. And then the last thing I'll mention here on the district-wide page, programmatically, every year the fees for our officials for our athletic contests go up, and they pass those costs on to us. It seems to be about $5,000 every year more, so we have to build those into our spending plan. Some of our other non-instructional district-wide costs, mostly non-instructional, I guess I'll point out, we asked all of our leaders to go back and look at their line item budgets to see where they could trim. This represents a 5% reduction to certain per pupil allocations, and then other areas where we could save a little bit of money. Across the district, this is elementary, middle, high school, other programs. It's just shy of $30,000 at $29,675. We also looked at our software usage and are reducing 3 items that we would consider underutilized for the cost or duplicative of other tools that are available. So we'll save just shy of $40,000 by not subscribing to 3 called Castle Learning, Ed Puzzle, and Forecast 5. The last item on this page is cost neutral, but we are looking to reorganize our computer tech support by providing for a lead computer technician for one of our existing staff to help build that career ladder. We would offset that cost by reducing our contractual services. We do have technology purchases that we continue to need. We are part of an installment purchase agreement with Capital Region BOCES. This is a multi-year agreement. We are on target to purchase teacher Chromebooks, some Promethean panels, and Chromebooks for grades 4, 5, and 9 for next year, and that cost is $259,875. And then we also have some work to do to replace our wireless access points and network switches. The total cost is $529. However, we are offsetting most of that with something called E-rate. I will not dive into the weeds of E-rate tonight, but it is a funding stream that is available to us but does not cover all of our costs. Our costs will be $125,000. The next one, Andrew mentioned this, huge decrease in our contract transportation services, over $2 million. A lot of that is due to our routing software that really tightened up our the number of routes and the number of stops. Not everyone has loved it, as you've heard about bus stop complaints, but we're trying very hard to be efficient, and it certainly does make a difference. We've also had some good success hiring district drivers. It's a huge positive impact, and we are very happy to pay our own people rather than the contractors. And that additional $200,000, that varies, but it is a shift in cost from our contract services to our own Guilderland staff. Another big increase is for our waste removal. This item just went out to bid. It is up $51,000, which is a significant increase. We understand it's associated with increased tipping fees for waste removal. So, last thing, I'm coming to the end of our recommendations here. I just want to point out that this plan also addresses some facilities needs. We have some work to do at Pine Bush in the reading room. The carpet in that room needs to be removed. It's causing some health issues with staff. It's got to go. So we are using funds available to us through transfer to capital, which is part of some of the exclusions that Andrew talked about in the tax levy calculation. We use these funds to help do smaller capital improvements that can't wait for the big capital project to pass and go through all of the steps there. So we'll be removing carpet, and we'll also be doing some window replacements as needed across the district. Those of you who were watching the Future Ready Task Force capital project presentation know that we deferred replacing some windows in places to keep within a reasonable budget there. And then lastly, we have spent quite a bit of funds over the years to do our lead testing. Have to do it, we have that complete, but we are shifting some of that over to replace our AEDs to make sure those are working when needed. So we've had just lots and lots of challenges in putting together this budget. And they're rather unusual challenges. The first, and I think this is the one that will be most lasting unless something changes dramatically, is that we are seeing significant declines in early elementary enrollment and future kindergarten projections. If that holds true, that is going to work its way through the whole organization. And it will be really important that the district, as hard as it is, right sizes staff as that happens. Very, very important to watch that enrollment as it moves through. The second bullet here, we've never been in a spot where the increase to a single line item outstrips our entire tax levy limit possibility. That is really one of the big parts of the story of this budget. Our health insurance increase is more than all that we can levy from our community by quite a bit. Add on to that the flat state aid, which is actually down $133,000. Add on to that our obligation to repay on our tax certiorari claims. And we've created or inherited or find ourselves in really a pretty perfect storm here. So this plan maintains class size guidelines, maintains most, not all, programs and services to support our students, includes enrollment-driven reductions using attrition whenever possible, adds programs and services that are deemed necessary, and addresses, because we have to, increase costs that are out of our control, things like health insurance, large tax refunds. But as I said in the beginning, after all of that, we are still $450,000 short. And we're hoping for some guidance on what to do about that. There are not a lot of options. One is to use additional fund balance in reserves. I say this with real caution because a year from now, the district doesn't want to be in a place where it does not have reserves and fund balance. I will remind everyone about the years when we were on the comptroller's list of susceptible to fiscal risk, which raised our costs for borrowing money and put us in a very bad spot. So that is to be done with care. We can look at additional reductions in spending. If so, what are they? We are really not at a place where there are easy reductions. I can tell you, I bet I had 50 ideas to run by our friend, the assistant superintendent for business. And every time I said, well, what about this? What about that? He said, well, I've already accounted for that. So we're at kind of a difficult place. Ultimately, I think we're going to be at some combination of some savings, some reductions, maybe more some creative thinking on how we solve some immediate issues and so on. But it's early March. There are a lot of unknowns that can affect our operating, our budget. The state budget hasn't been adopted yet. It's going to be probably the middle of April before it does. There's lots of worry out there I would like to quell, but there is worry out there about potential changes to federal funding. And then the ubiquitous other that comes to us from left field. So here's the next steps. It's our hope that a week from tonight, we can share with the board kind of the completed budget document with the appendices and so on, so you get the full picture, and then we can, obviously, we're happy to answer any questions right now, get your feedback, but also if there are more questions for our leadership team or district office team. March 25th is a regular board meeting, but we also call it our budget workshop because it will be our last board meeting before budget adoption on April 8th. Our hearing is on May 8th, and the budget vote and board election is May 20th. Meredith, wow, that was fast.
I've been waiting. Number one, have we looked at any grant funding opportunities? I know that they're not always long-term, but they could help alleviate some of that $450,000 shortfall.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
We do have some potential options around one-time only dollars that we are looking at, and perhaps can say a little bit more about next time. But I just want to point out, because we lived this with our COVID dollars, trying to find things, expenses that are one-time only, so we're not building a higher cliff for
Right.
next time. But yes, we are absolutely doing that.
And then are our student averages, are they falling at the same rate as the federal birth rates, or is it different?
Go ahead, Andrew.
So within our region, we have one of the sharper declines in birth rates, and we have double-fold sharp decline in birth rate and a decline in the translation or the yield, right? The
When
number
you say
of
our region, what does that mean?
suburban council, capital districts. I look at the state publishes birth rate data by school district.
Okay.
So I look at the peer comparisons we do for a lot of our measures. I look Albany County seems to be harder hit by declining births, but we also have the lower yield. So if there's 306 babies born, we're not getting 330 kindergartners 5 years later. There was a time in the past where that did happen. So we're seeing both of those, which is likely a lot of factors, economic and real estate, I would guess, are two of the pressures.
So there are fewer babies and fewer people moving in to the community.
And then when Governor Hochul's initiatives for free breakfast and lunch hit, you said next year,
So
right? Because that's being phased in. Are we sure that's going to hit?
It won't affect this anyway.
It won't affect this, but
For the
for
school lunch
future
fund?
years, will it have any effect on those budgets?
No, it would only affect our school lunch fund, which right now is at a surplus.
Okay.
From the previous time when lunches were free and there were accelerated reimbursement rates to try to promote free meals. But our food service budget is entirely separate from our general fund budget,
it.
which is
Okay.
what this is. So Renee Heller, our food service director, manages that and would account for the increased funds. But we could not use them in this.
And so with this $450,000 shortfall, does that mean that cell phone pouches are still on the table?
Remember that grant money we were talking about?
Yeah.
Well, that's the perfect one-time only
Okay.
purchase.
I want to use the example because I mentioned it in the presentation and we'll have the resolution on it earlier. Dr. Wiles alluded to the fiscal cliff, which is what happens when you fill in recurring costs with one-time funds, you deplete those funds and end up in a bigger hole than where you had been. One way you might think to yourself out of that is, well, this is not going to be a recurring challenge, which is why I keep highlighting the enrollment declines, because we are going to have almost certainly fewer students in the next 3 years. And I would say very likely fewer students in the next 5 years. So if we tried to use one-time funds, we would be setting up a much larger challenge. A good use of one-time funds are either purchases like yonder pouches or other kind of one-time
Right.
materials, or the funds that the board will consider putting in the capital reserve today. Those were surplus funds from this year that we are going to plan on using for the next capital project to reduce the impact on taxpayers, reduce the borrowing costs.
Okay.
Are you done, Mayor?
Someone else can go. I'll probably jump in.
Along
again.
the same lines as Meredith, maybe you know, is there any word of any kind of state reimbursement or state funding for the Yonder pouches?
There's $13.5 million in the governor's proposal. I'm not sure if that is going to stay when it goes, it's to the legislature. I'm not sure if it will be handled like a grant that you apply for or some certain amount. We really don't know. So we've got a couple avenues. However, we have not built it into this general operating plan at this point.
You have not built in the cost of the Yonder pouches or the possibility of funding to offset it?
In what we've presented tonight, we have not built that in. We would look to alternative funding
Okay.
for that,
Great,
for which we have good ideas.
awesome, thank you.
Go, Kelly.
Has anybody
We're
looked?
going to let these guys go first.
Anybody looked towards next year and the year after's attrition to kind of get a sense of what that looks like as far as salaries? And the second, I just want to get the second question out before somebody else does. Is there anything else that we could possibly push towards the capital project, like these technology purchases or the wireless access points?
So the challenge is that the wireless access points, no, because E-rate funds expire. So to leverage, a 4-time return on the money, we have to do it next year. And we're buying it through BOCES, so we also get BOCES on that. 20% of the costs we're covering, we get the majority of that back in aid. So that's the reason we have to do that now. And the installment purchases, it's the same thing. We need the Chromebooks next year.
Yeah,
We need to get on a cycle of Promethean panels. So if we drop, one thing we talked about was dropping the Promethean panels, but we have devoted a lot of resources, time and energy, and financial resources to getting Promethean boards in every instructional space. The capital project's going to bring that to fruition. The capital project is what we use for the installation because the costs can be enormous if asbestos is identified, but replacement's fairly easy, and we want to get that established in the budget because if we don't, we're going to all of a sudden need to replace half the Promethean panels in a given year, and that would be very expensive.
Wait, he didn't answer the first part.
No,
That was the big question. That was the second part. The big kind of big money question was about next year's or the next year after its attrition. As far as I kind of squeezed in two questions.
So I'm going to bring Regan into that one.
That's difficult to track or to really have a good idea. I mean, we do track pre-retirement meetings for people who are not retired quite yet, but thinking about it in the future. But people who are of retirement age, but who are going to work a little bit longer, it's very difficult to track that. We've had a couple of years of big numbers in our instructional staff, like 3 in a row. This year was down a little bit compared to what it's been recently. It's hard to say.
But we also have a very large number of new and newer teachers.
As you can see by the consent agenda tonight with all the tenure recipients on there.
When they announce retirement, is there a time of year that usually happens?
It's based on contract language. Our instructional staff is teachers and teaching assistants is by February 1st.
Okay.
Other contracts are different in number of days they've got to give notice.
Thank you.
That date's to get the retirement incentive, so the payouts, the benefits.
Could you just remind me what our current fund balance is? And isn't it relatively small compared to the suburban council?
I don't have the exact figure, but it did increase this year, but some of that increase was borrowing related to the tax certiorari because it had been so depleted. But I can get the exact figure for you later.
And we didn't use any fund balance in our operating budget this year.
I believe we budgeted $20,000, but did not appropriate it, so we've not actually used it. But that's down significantly from the previous years.
I think it's been improving.
Yes.
We've
Right.
been
I mean,
decreasing it.
At one point, it was like,
At one point, it was significant, and we were also actually dipping into reserves. And the two reasons were both things we've talked about today. tax certiorari refunds that were much larger than anticipated or budgeted for, and the explosion in contract transportation, which we would increase the budget, $400,000 or $500,000, and expenses would still go beyond that. So this is a significant change in the experience this year.
Are we putting money into the fund balance this year? I haven't seen the numbers.
We will likely have in the consent agenda, there's our fund balance projection. We are projecting a fund balance increase this year. Tonight, the resolution puts a big chunk of that into the capital reserve. And the reason for that, normally we would do that, or often we would do that at the end of the fiscal year, but if we want to use it in the capital project, it has to be in the capital reserve before the board adopts a resolution about the capital project.
I guess what I mean, so you were that's a transfer, right? But like
So
how much of this budget this year, if it's approved as is, will be dumped into the general fund for next year? Any?
So we have not budgeted. There's a couple ways you can fund reserves or fund balance. One, you can put them in ahead of time. What most frequently happens is you end up with a surplus because we budget for contingencies, and often not every
Oh, the
contingency
leftover
happens.
goes
When we
into-
have a surplus at the end of the year, we develop. I work with our financial advisor, John Rizzo, our business manager, develop a reserve plan that I share with the board to fund various reserves based on if there is a surplus. And so right now we're projecting a year-end surplus. I'm very confident that that will be realized. A large part of that is because of the contract transportation experience this year, actuals to budget, which is why, again, recommending the capital reserve funding now rather than waiting until the end of the year.
Were the Promethean boards bought with federal funding? I feel like I remember that.
I believe we bought them in a number of avenues.
Okay.
There.
All right. Are we good? Okay.
Blanca?
Yes. Oh, Gloria, hi.
Yeah, I had my hand up. I don't know if you can read it or hear me.
Yep, we can.
I'm just curious, I don't know if I missed it. The yonder pouches, the cost of those, is that just for the high school or for middle and high?
Can you repeat the question, Ellen?
I caught it. It was, if we were to do the yonder pouches, is it just high school or middle and high? I would say we would just look at high school because the middle school seems to have managed to make that transition without them.
Yep. So what would cost be that way?
They're $30 a student, so it's
Okay.
going to be
Okay.
about 1,500 times 30.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Is there any way that we can make kindergarten, our classrooms, more attractive for parents to move here? 'Cause that seems to be the name of the game, is we're losing kids. And if we look at, say, Altamont, for example, is there anything that the village can do that can help bring in more families? 'Cause that's kind of
Could somebody repeat that? I'm not hearing it at all.
His question was, sorry, I think this mic is there anything that we or the villages or towns can do to make kindergarten more attractive or make things more attractive for families to move in?
yeah.
Both my speculation and what I've heard from people who would like to move in is I think there is demand for moving in. I think the real estate market is the most significant challenge that I've heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Cost of
Cost of living here.
starter homes for
Yeah.
the young people who have kindergartners are often earlier in their income earning cycle, and looking for more affordable housing, and
We're expensive.
there's a dearth of
It's
it in our
expensive.
school district.
We're very expensive.
Here's a suggestion too, with a lot of the apartment complexes we have, is there something that basically we could tell them that if they have a significant number of families, with students, we pass that savings on to them in their taxes. So if they're getting more and more, if they're getting more and more families in there, you know, instead of like say 3 roommates, they're generating, you know, we're having more students come to the schools, which helps our numbers. And in that sense, you know, if they're generating more, you know, families, we kind of give them a little bit of a break.
I don't know that we have the legal authority to do that, but it's very creative, Mr. Dwyer.
The laws about tax exemptions are very, very specific. So in previous board meetings, you know, the board considered and adopted a resolution about an exemption, and that was, as we covered in great detail, heavily prescribed by law what you can and can't do. But that would, we do want families to move in.
Yeah.
This is anecdotal, but I think I'm the only person with kids that are going to be going into kindergarten on the board. The attractiveness of the classrooms had nothing to do with why we moved into the district. It was all about the quality of the education. So that's why my husband and I chose to move here.
I thought you were just calling us old, Meredith.
I mean, I had my kids pretty late, so.
So that's what I'm basically saying. It's not the look of it, but the quality of the education. As it stands, we're kind of further below, like Bethlehem and Voorheesville. They're up in the
some ways.
upper 50s. Yeah, and that's just one of those things that can we look at it and say, is there something that we can start putting together that can really just attract them? So we can, hey, we're something, because we're gonna need it.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. We can move on to the consent items, but can we release our administrators yet?
They are free.
Do I have
they
that
are
authority?
Free agents if they want to
She's
stay.
trying to send you home. Thank you guys for coming out.
You are welcome to stay or go.
Okay, consent items. Can I get a motion to take action and accept the recommendations here? So that includes the minutes, the CSE, CPSE, and financials and personnel agenda items. First Meredith and second Katie. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Okay, passes 9-0.
Congratulations to our
Gloria.
tenured teachers, very many.
We just granted tenure to many, many extraordinary teachers who are new to us, as well as Jackie Vandenberg, who is not leaving. Thank you. And I just want to say, one of the best parts of my job is going out and visiting the classrooms and seeing all of these talented folks that we have brought as part of our team. And this is one of the strongest tenure classes I can remember. Just very, very good. So we're doing something right to attract somebody, and we're thankful for that. So congratulations to everyone who reached this milestone.
Yay, thank you.
Good.
Okay, and then we'll move on to curriculum and instruction.
Good evening. I have several accolades tonight. First, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. The Scholastic Art and Writing Awards have been given out since 1923 and have recognized some of the nation's most celebrated artists and writers while they were teenagers, including Tashabala Self, Stephen King, Kay Walkingstick, Jose Parla, Amanda Gorman, Charles White, Joyce Carol Oates, and Andy Warhol, to name a few. We are proud to count the following students among these esteemed Scholastic Art and Writing Awards alumni. Shruthika Manga with a gold key in painting and a silver key in drawing and illustration. Jackie Newen with a silver key in drawing and illustration and also an honorable mention in drawing and illustration. Angela Lee with an honorable mention in painting, and the slideshow of their work is included on the agenda for you. We have another set of art awards. We had 7 Guilderland High School art students compete in the 3D juried art exhibition. The Art in 3 Dimensions competition was open to all high school students in the capital region. There were 280 sculptures submitted, and 81 of those were selected. Congratulations to the following students who were selected for the 3D juried exhibition. Rosemary Glass with Dragon, Juliana Goto with Puppy, Taylor Keeling with Sea Turtle Trash, Ellen Smittis with Hoodie, Amelia Sewin with Fly Between the Extremes, Lily Teller with Hawk, and Ashley Tompkins with A Simple Breakfast. And again, a slideshow of those works are included on the agenda. And my third accolade is from the Science Olympiad. On Saturday, February 1st, Guilderland High School Science Olympiad Club competed in the Capital Regional Tournament at Ballston Spa High School. 13 students competed in 19 out of the 23 events, and the team placed 7th out of 19 teams total and earned medals in the following 8 events. Astronomy, 2nd place, that's Anthony Egan and William Smittis. Chemistry Lab, 3rd place, again Anthony Egan and William Smittis. Code Busters, 2nd place, Eleanor Smittis, Jeannie Liu, and Isabella Wu. Ecology, 5th place with Peter Liu and Zexi Wang. Fossils, 4th place with Nanadwa Frimpong and Sanya Shugule. Geologic Mapping, 4th place with Jeannie Liu and Isabella Wu. Material Science, 2nd place with Anthony Egan and William Smittis. And Microbe Mission, 4th place with Sanya Shugul and Hamshini Subramanian. And congratulations to all of those students and also to their faculty advisor, Alex Nealis. I also have, I also have 3 textbook approvals for you, or textbook reviews for you. First, we have from the E&L department, Language Launch English 3D by Kate Kinsella for use with grades 4 through 12. So there's, and again, copies of all of these if anyone wants to review them after the meeting. Introductory Statistics by Gold, Wong, and Ryan for use in 11th and 12th grade statistics. And, sorry, that one's a little heavy. And Accountable by Dashka Slater for use in English 10. And we'll be asking for your approval for all 3 of those textbooks at the April 8th meeting.
Okay, great. Superintendent information?
Just one item today. Back on February 5th, the Guilderland Chamber of Commerce hosted their Meet Your Representatives meeting, which was an opportunity for elected officials at it was federal, state, county, town, all were there to give their perspective on how things are going in their respective jurisdictions. I was also one of the speakers. The event was held at the Funny Bone on February 5th, and it was just a good opportunity to hear from our town supervisor and our congressmen and our elected officials on how things are going. A lot was focused on the changing reality given the new administration at the federal level and what the implications may be for us at the local level. So it was a good opportunity to network.
Great, thank you. Board President information. Upcoming Board of Education election will be May 20th, 2025. Petitions are available through the district clerk for any district residents who might be considering running for the Board of Education. 47 signatures of eligible district voters are required based on 2% of those voting in last year's election. There are 3 3-year terms on the board that will begin July 1st, 2025, and 1 2-year term that will begin May 21st, 2025. In order to be eligible to run for the Board of Education, nominating petitions with 47 or more signatures from qualified voters in the district must be submitted to the district clerk on or before Monday, April 21st, 2025 by 5 p.m. Anyone who has questions about the duties and responsibilities of a board member may contact the superintendent, me, or any current board member. A candidate must be able to read and write, be at least 18 years of age, a qualified voter, and a district resident for at least 1 year prior to the date of the vote on Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Further qualifications and information is in the packet available through the district clerk. Okay. So we have our Board of Education policy review next. The following are presented for information and discussion only. And it's, well, you see them all there. There's like a whole bunch of them. But school business management, action items.
Thank you. Before I start, I do want to clarify one thing in response to Kelly's question. The fund balance projection was actually in our last meeting, but I pulled it up, and we're projecting a $2.5 million fund balance at the end of this year, which again is why proposing transferring some of that to the capital reserve now. All right. My first action item is a scholarship, which is from the Gilderland Boys Varsity Basketball Booster Association. It would be awarded to a player who has played in the program for all 4 years, contributed to the basketball program, demonstrated leadership, sportsmanship, character, and has been involved in school activities and/or community service.
Nice. Can I get a motion for that? Rebecca, second Nina. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Passes 9-0.
Thank you. My next item is extending our agreement with West & Company CPAs to provide external auditing services for the 24-25 school year. We are very happy with their service.
Great. Can I get a motion to accept the external auditor agreement? Kelly, second. Tara, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, passes 9-0, sorry.
My next item is awarding our garbage, rubbish, and recyclables bid. As Dr. Wiles alluded to earlier, this is significantly increased. We did have 2 bids, but the Casella Waste Management's bid was the lowest one.
Okay, can I get a motion to accept the garbage, rubbish, and recyclable bid? Tara, second. Kim, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you. My next item are service agreements, which provide training and consultation services for staff and services to students.
Motion to approve the service agreements. Can Gloria be a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Gloria, second. Meredith, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Passes 9-0.
The next item is the resolution for the school bus and vehicle purchase, and I will turn it over to Linda in just a moment. I just want to recap that Craig Lips, our transportation director, presented this at the previous meeting. The bond for the purchase of the electric school buses would be fully neutral to the community, but there would be only be a cost for the truck for maintenance.
Okay, motion to approve. Katie, second. Rebecca, any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Nope.
I gotta do a roll call.
Oh, roll call, my bad.
Ready?
Yep, ready.
Mrs. Blasiak?
Yes.
Dr. Butterfield?
Yes.
Mrs. DePiero?
Yes.
Mrs. Gonzalez Parker?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaplan?
Yes.
Mrs. Malloy Grockley?
Yes.
Mrs. Person?
Yes.
Mrs. Breer?
Yes.
Mrs. Tolhill?
Yes.
I did the same. Okay. Thank you. What's next? Is that it?
I have one more.
Okay.
My final item is the transfer to the capital fund that I've mentioned earlier.
Okay. Can I get a motion to transfer the capital funds? I forgot where I was. I think it's Nina, second Kelly. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you.
Okay, superintendent action items.
All right, I have 2 items. The first is a memorandum of agreement. Be it resolved that the Board of Education authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute a proposed memorandum of agreement between Shannon Elliott and the Gilderland Central School District.
Okay, motion Kelly, second Tara. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? 9-0.
And my second item is the appointment of election chair for our May 2025 budget vote and elections, and I'm recommending the appointment of Mr. Neil Sanders to come and serve as our election chair for this budget vote.
Oh, nice. Motion to approve, accept the appointment of Mr. Sanders. Tara, second. Kim, any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes 9-0. Board president action items. We have a memorandum of agreement, and it's obviously between us. Didn't you just say that, actually?
You just read it.
Okay. So be it resolved that the Board of Education agrees to execute the proposed memorandum of agreement between the Superintendent of Schools, Marie Wiles, PhD, and the Guilderland Central School District. Can I get a motion, please? Gloria, second Meredith. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? 9-0. Board committee reports. Audit?
Sorry. We met on February 25th. The biggest agenda item that we talked about was selecting the internal audit. So we reviewed our previous selections for the last several years, and ultimately decided to do our internal audit this year on the onboarding process, given the high amounts of turnover recently. We also approved some claims reports that were on the agenda already, and our next meeting is not yet scheduled.
We also welcomed our newest member of the audit committee.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
How about business practices?
We have not met.
Okay. Communications?
We meet again on the 11th at 5 p.m.
Okay. DEI? Is that
Meeting next week?
next week? Okay. Yep, we meet next week. I don't think we've met since.
We met on, I just pulled up the minutes.
Okay.
We met on February 12th last. And
It does.
we heard from subcommittees.
Oh, thanks.
We heard about DEI in action and the work that Derek and Leah are doing around the district. And our discussion was on, sorry, I have a lot there. Oh, actually, this is important. It's March. It's that time when we start recruiting members for the DEI committee going forward. We'll be sending out letters or an invitation to get letters of interest probably a little bit later in the month. So we'll welcome new individuals to join us. We'll be looking for 5 new members, I believe. And then the learning component that evening, we all read an article from Forbes entitled, "Not Everyone Will Support DEI, and That's Okay. Here's How to Keep Moving Forward." So,
Remember. Great. Policy committee?
We met on February 18th. The policies for review tonight were what we discussed.
Okay.
We don't have a next meeting scheduled.
Okay. Great, thank you. Public comment number 2? No. Okay. Board issues, ideas, and sharing. Meredith.
So I had a meeting with Patrick Longo, and who is our NISBA rep, and we talked about what the upcoming years will look like from a lobbying standpoint and what issues we will want to take on collectively as boards for the upcoming few years. One of the things that keeps coming up over and over again is the concept of bullying, and bullying leading to other things like academic issues and other action items. And I brought up that I wanted to see more interest in combating bullying, and then I personally think probably harsher punishment for bullying in schools. I don't know if anybody shares that, but it was something that I keep seeing as a theme in many, many avenues, and I think bullying leads to behavioral issues. I think it is a behavioral issue itself, but it's something that I really want to start talking about more, because so many of the other things that we talk about as being problematic within the student population, it really stems from a bullying epidemic. So that's something that I really want to see lobbied a little bit more, and talk about what kind of legislation can come forth out of that conversation. So I just wanted to put that forth and let you guys know it's on my radar, that I've talked to Patrick about it, and I think we'll have some more conversations about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Your viewpoints are shared by a lot of the community. As we had the climate survey came out, that a lot of that was what was driving a lot of the people to feel frustrated about. So your thoughts are definitely at the same level of a lot of others. So I think share those viewpoints, including my own.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Sorry, I actually had two. First of all, congratulations to Mask. So for their performances.
Great.
I also Leah actually sent me an email about different DEI meetings within the district, and I went to Pine Bush today to see a speaker, Matt Barnes, who went to Antarctica. All the second graders got to see him. He went to GES today too. Was way too excited about it. Fun fact, there are polar bears only at the North Pole, and there are penguins only at South Pole. He drilled that into our heads. But it was amazing. The kids were so excited, asked so many great questions. He brought in like all the gear, everything. So it was just really, it was amazing to see. And thank you to Leah also for bringing that forward to let me know.
Great. Thank you. I agree with the sentiment of bullying. I will say, since being on the board, I understand now that it's multidimensional and also complicated. A lot of times, we as the board or our administrators want to do more and can't, and that comes from state, right, regulation, among other things. But I certainly think it warrants a discussion. I wanted to wish good luck to the Guilderland players this weekend, and I hope folks will come out to see the musical. And I had one other thing I was going to bring up, but now it escapes me. It's gone. So, motion to adjourn and return to executive session. Okay, Meredith, second Katie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Reagan?